Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Duncan, Linda, Wyatt, and Milla, I'd like to welcome you all and those watching on live stream here today to celebrate the amazing, wonderful life of Luke Ray Edwards, who made such an impact on so many in such a short time. I'm going to ask Cherie to come up and say a prayer before we start, but I'd like to bring Milla, his girlfriend, into our thoughts today. She's unfortunately stuck in Mexico. She tried to get here, but due to visa constraints, she couldn't make it. So I'm going to ask Cherie to come up and pray, and if we can just keep Milla in our thoughts. Thank you.
Let's pray. Father God, we just thank you for your love. We thank you for your comfort, Lord. And we ask, Lord, today that you wrap your arms around Linda, Duncan, Wyatt, and Milla particularly, and all of us that are mourning the loss of Luke. Father God, you know every single hair on his head. You knew him before he was formed in his mother's womb, and you knew exactly where he was going to be, and that's in your welcome arms. So Father, today we just ask that you spread your love around here, you spread your comfort, and you just bring peace like a river in Jesus' name.
Sorry for the feedback. I'd like you all to stand. We're just going to sing Amazing Grace. Sorry, the sound doesn't seem to be working. If we could just sing Amazing Grace. I don't know if there's any singers here, but I'm certainly not. I'll start. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. The Lord has promised good to me. His word my hope secures. He will my shield and portion be, as long as life endures. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. This grace has brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When living here 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, with no less days to Ray Edwards, lovingly known as Lukey to his family and friends, gorgeous to his mom Linda, Mom Machine, he's there, Duncan, big brother to Wyatt. For those who do not know who I am, my name is Gary. I'm Luke's uncle and Linda's brother. So where do you start talking about a boy whose life was so full? First of all, I shouldn't be up here. Luke should be up here talking about me. I shouldn't be talking about him. It's just not right. Well, anyway, let me try. Luke was the first son of Linda and Duncan, older brother to Wyatt. He was born on the 7th of September, 1992, and was taken away from us so tragically on the 9th of April, 32 years old. Luke completed his education in Maritzburg College, where he obtained his matric certificate. He furthered his studies at the University of KZN, obtaining a BCom. Luke was a normal child, growing up in a loving and caring home, loved by his mom and his dad, and his cousins, and he always had time for everyone in his family. But Luke's life was never half measures. Although very stubborn, like his mom and his grand, his yes was yes and his no was no. There would be no point getting into argument with him or discussion with him. Because you just couldn't win it with Luke. Luke loved his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and became quite a master at fighting in many tournaments and achieving much respect from his peers. And you should hear from some of his trainers and teammates later. But amongst all this, Luke was a gentle, loving, caring young man. Luke would give you the shirt off his back. With Luke, it was family first, money came second. I remember when my son Tegan started soccer, Luke heard about this while he's working in China, and without hesitation, he insisted on sending money for Tegan's to buy the best of the best. I think Tegan might still have those boots today. He bought Tegan clothes when we were in Canada, and his favorite was paying for his cousins' airfares if they were short of money. And I could go on and on and on and on. Luke was, family comes first, money comes second. He was the proverbial hugger. He always give you the biggest hugs with those heavily tattooed arms of his. He wasn't afraid to shed a tear or two if he was sad or upset. I remember when Luke traveled to Canada for my daughters Candace and Sonia's wedding. On arriving there, he promptly gave himself the job of being in charge of making the flowers, the flower arrangements. Yeah, macho Luke, he was in charge of the flowers, and he did a very good job. So when it was time for him to move to Mexico, he had made some everlasting friends in Canada. He had crept into the heart of all of Sonia's family, friends, and as if he had known them for years. The morning of the departure, it was 5 a.m. He had to get to the airport, and he came to say goodbye to all of us while he was living in the house. He came up to the bedroom where Shri and I were, and as he started hugging Shri, he started crying like a baby because he was leaving us. That was Luke. Of course, we all started crying. He was a softie, no doubt. Luke had become like a brother more than a brother and a cousin to the girls, he would call them. And whenever he had the chance, Luke would phone them. He loved them and they adored him. Luke loved his art and made no mistake about it, he was very talented. Drawing the most intricate of pictures, focusing on the smallest of details. I've got a self-portrait that he did of himself. He had a Nike bag on him, or Nike shoes on him. He had a bag on him, and he had all his tattoos done. And if you zoom out, you can see how intricate he had done the logo of the Nike tackies. And on the belt, he had this buckle he had done in really, really brilliant. But Luke truly believed everybody could become an artist. the talent to draw. He was going to test his theory when he was with us, having Cherie, Ting, and myself, getting a piece of paper and having a go at drawing a cup or something like that. And then he was going to give us tips and show us how to do it. But sadly, we never got the chance. When we were young, we were all younger, the family spent many weekends camping. On one occasion, we went to a campsite that had a horse paddock right next to it. After lunch, all the adults went for their afternoon siestas, and I woke up to this ruckus. I can still remember it clearly. When I got myself outside, Duncan was beside himself. Apparently, Luke had decided, in his wisdom, to climb on the back of this horse and ride it. The problem was, the horse was so wild, it had never been ridden before. This was the scene that greeted me. Duncan charging after Luke on this horse, Luke holding for dear life, desperately. The horse desperately tried to back him off, and eventually Luke was thrown off and hit the ground, narrowly missing the floor, and almost got kicked in the head. The farmer was amazed that Luke was still alive. But Luke got up, dusted himself off, and he was trying to get on the horse again. Crazy. Anyway, Duncan tells a story of when Luke was playing rugby at college. Duncan used to travel from Durban to Maritzburg to watch him. On this particular day, he arrived about 5 minutes late. And like every parent, you look for your kid. Where is he on the field? And he didn't see him. Underneath the post, lo and behold, there sat Luke, red carded. He had only been on the field 5 minutes. He had punched one of the opposition and was sent off. At the disciplinary on Monday morning, he was the only one that didn't get a detention. Apparently, he didn't make an excuse. He just said, "I'm guilty. I punched him, sir." And for his honesty, he was let off. Linda loathed going to the teachers' parents' meetings. One of the teachers would praise him, praise Luke for being such a lovely, dedicated, wonderful pupil, and the next would say he's lazy, not interested, and would never pass matric. Well, he did with exemption. After spending a few years in SA, Luke decided to head to China to teach, where he learned a bit of the local language. He got bored after a year or two and decided to go to Mexico, where after a time he met and fell in love with Milla. He spent about 2 years there, progressing in his jiu-jitsu, playing online poker, and learning how to dance, of all things. I remember Duncan sending me videos, or showing me videos of Luke dancing. It was pretty good. I think it was the Mexican salsa or something like that. It was very good. So, some water. So Luke decided to return home about a month ago to finish a book that he was writing about his life story. The book was titled How Poker Led Me to God. Very interesting title. So Cherie, my wife, and I had the pleasure of spending some time with Luke before he passed. We had some deep, intense conversations with him. Amongst other things were his love for Millie and his future plans, and his coming to his belief in God. Even in his troubled state, Luke had come to realize there must be a purpose in life. He had downloaded the Bible and began to study it, and he knew it quite well. See, Luke had been a self-proclaimed atheist, so I was shocked to hear how much of the Bible he had actually absorbed. Then I remembered 2 years ago at the wedding in Canada, when we had some time alone, we were sitting out on the deck, and he wasn't doing wedding things, And he started asking questions about a creator, a creation, a first cause. Now, even in his confused state, I believe Luke did find the truth and is now at peace with Jesus. While he was here, took a ride. I don't know where we went to. I think we might have gone to the hospital or something. And he asked Shuri, how do you become a pastor? I was flabbergasted. Can you imagine Pastor Luke? Okay, so in conclusion, I'd just like to share a small but overlooked part of Scripture in the Bible, if you don't mind. Strangely, it comes from the book of Luke, and not how Poker led me to God. This is the Bible. It's Luke 23, chapter 39. It's about the thief on the cross. So when Jesus was crucified in Calvary, there were two criminals who were crucified next to him, either side of him. One of the thieves mocked him and ridiculed him. But it's the other thief, which I find rather interesting. He cried out, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus replied, truly, truly, I tell you today, you will be with me in paradise. So let's look at this other thief. He never went to church. He was never baptized. He never tithed. He didn't say the sinner's prayer. All he did was believe. Let's have a look at Luke. Luke never went to church besides weddings and funerals. He was never baptized. He was Christian when he was young, I think. He never tithed. He gave a lot of money away, but he never tithed to the church and never said the sinner's prayer. All Luke did was believe. You see, it's not by works that you're saved, it's by faith alone. You cannot work your way into heaven. Salvation is a free gift only through the cross of Calvary. Thank you very much for listening. I'd like to call up Wyatt now to say a few words. And then after Wyatt, Candy and Sonia, Amy Wilson, Kim Tomlinson, and Kendall Kulsa. And we're going to open the floor to anybody who would like to say something. If you feel you've got something to share, please come up. Thanks, Wyatt.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for being here today to celebrate the life of Luke. Just firstly, from my side, I'd like to thank everyone who's reached out to me and my family throughout this dreadful period. Your love and support has meant the world to us. In the past few weeks, numerous family members and friends have urged me to release the painful or negative memories associated with Luke and to instead center my thoughts on the meaningful experiences and cherished moments that exemplified his remarkable character. But I'd briefly like to go against that advice and share a slightly disheartening story with you all regarding Luke and I. From the end of 2020 to the early months of 2024, my brother and I didn't communicate with each other. We had a falling out that led to us not speaking or seeing each other over almost a 4-year period. We were both stubborn for so long and failed to rekindle our friendship. Throughout that time, if we wanted to know something, we would find out information about each other through our parents. Looking back, it was an awful situation, but that's family sometimes. Thankfully, the morbid part of the story ends there, because early last year, Luke was the one who reached out to me. He became the bigger man and set about resolving the problem we had created between each other. He played the role of the bigger brother and was the sole reason we became inseparable again, as if nothing had happened between us. Without his strength and maturity, and without his undying love and kindness, I'm afraid the story wouldn't have had a happy ending. I was able to take away a valuable life lesson from this experience, and I owe it all to Luke. We need to learn to live and let go sometimes. Life is too short to hold a grudge, especially with family or close friends. It's okay to be the bigger person, even if you feel like it's going to crush your pride or your ego. On that day, it wasn't necessarily Luke's fault that we had that falling out, but that didn't stop him. So thank you, Luke. Moving on, Luke was an extremely talented individual. He inherited my dad's art genes and created some fantastic work over the years. Oh, how I wish I had 10% of his artistic talent. We were both very passionate about chess. I hated playing him because I knew I was always going to lose. Looking back, I'm convinced the only times that I won was because he let me. Luke was also a purple belt Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu animal. Growing up, I always knew that I was safe with my big bro next to me. Oftentimes, his blatant stubbornness whilst out jawling often landed him in trouble, but he always came out on top with a cheeky grin on his face, ready for more. Luke enjoyed keeping busy and always wanted to be improving or honing his craft at something. He was extremely good at learning languages when he actually put his mind to it. His Mandarin was at a high level upon leaving China in 2020, and his Spanish was even better when I was with him in Mexico in February. Luke was even learning Zulu, as he felt a bit embarrassed to not speak an African language. He specifically asked our family's domestic worker and our next door neighbor to only speak to him in Zulu around the house. It's kind of poetic actually, because Luke failed Zulu in matric because of his stubbornness, but here he was, rewriting his wrongs. I'm so grateful that I was able to spend some quality time with Luke in Mexico a few months ago. I will never forget the memories that we shared together. I was particularly impressed when we both attended an open bachata class. I joined the beginners group and learned the basic steps, as this was my first time. But there was my big bro, showing off his refined dancing skills in the advanced class. For a white guy, Luke had some serious rhythm and knew several different dance styles. I was so proud to brag to some of the other beginner dancers that guy over there is my brother. And if I was alone, I would never have attended that class. I would have been way too embarrassed. But Luke taught me to be more confident and not give a damn and have total disregard for what others think or say. Wherever he is right now, he's definitely tearing up the dance floor and being the life of the party. Luke was my best friend, and I loved him so much. I was so proud of him, and he taught me so much in life. My big brother meant the world to me. He was more than just family. He was my protector, my role model, and my constant source of strength. I loved him deeply, in ways I'll never be able to explain. The memories we shared, the laughs, the talks, and even the silence, weaved into the fabric of who I am. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting or loving him any less. It means accepting that he's no longer here in the way I want him to be. It hurts, but I know he would want me and everyone he knew to keep living, keep growing, and carry his love with us always. It was your time to go, and I'll see you again someday. Okay. Next, I would like to read a small paragraph written by my mom and my dad, who, by the way, I'm so proud of. The trauma they have gone through over the last few weeks has been devastating, but they somehow still managed to push through and find some words to say about Luke. Here is what they wrote. Luke, we never imagined that we would not be able to hug you again, talk to you, laugh with you, celebrate your incredible achievements, and so much more that we took for granted. Our lives are shattered. You were kind, thoughtful, generous, and loved your family more than life itself. You idolized Wyatt, and our dad was immense in your life. We love you so much. We are so sorry we could not keep you safe. We will think of you daily for the rest of our lives. Love you forever, and you will always be our gorgeous child. Thank you. Okay, finally, this was the last speech I'm going to say. I would like to read a letter that was sent in by Milla. I'm privileged enough to have met her a few times, and all I can say is that she was Luke's angel sent down to earth, and she was meant to be the sister that I never had. Here's what she wrote. Okay, this is from Milla, but not me. It's titled A Beautiful Connection. I arrived at Atlas Gym and started getting ready for Muay Thai sparring. Oh, by the way, she is Spanish, so there might be a few small grammatical errors. I'm sure you can understand. A handsome guy was rolling on the jiu-jitsu mat, and I watched him, knowing he was watching me too. It was Friday, December 2nd, 2022. A week later, when Luke spoke to me for the first time, he asked, "Is this your first jiu-jitsu class?" I could barely answer, stammering, "No, it's my third class." I was so nervous. This incredibly handsome and sexy man was talking to me. During the class, when we had to pick partners to roll with, Luke asked if I would like to spar with him. Smart guy, right? A few days after that, we went on a date. My first date in English. Oh my God, I didn't know how I was going to talk to that man. I had only resumed studying English a few days before and could barely remember much. But I wasn't going to let that chance slip away. Somehow, we managed to keep the conversation flowing because, as you know, for love, there are no borders. I fell in love with Luke because he was genuine, sincere, warm-hearted, and generous. I loved his sense of humor. He was strong and handsome, a machine with a big heart. But more than his beautiful qualities, it was how he made me feel. He only ever saw my strengths. With him, I felt loved, intelligent, and protected. He made me feel like a strong, beautiful woman, and he treated me with such affection. I also felt completely free to express myself with him, something that was deeply important to me. I could be open, emotional, creative, or silly, and I never felt judged. I'm a better person thanks to him. I'm a better person thanks to him. Our most special moment happened last year on July 7th. The weekend before my birthday, we had planned a trip, but we had to cancel because a hurricane was coming. Friday night was difficult. It was loud, hot, and we had no electricity. Seems like Mexico also doesn't have electricity. We lived near the beach, and the storm passed right over us. The next day, Saturday, everything had calmed down, but we still had no power or water. We spent the day playing board games, and I'll never forget what Luke said. There's no one else I'd rather spend a hurricane with. On Sunday, we were going to celebrate my birthday. We grabbed chairs and an umbrella, left our phones at home, bought some food, and found a spot on the beach. We spent the whole day there, swimming, talking about everything and nothing, laughing so much and even crying a little. But we were so happy, and we felt a beautiful connection. Even though people were all around, it felt like it was just Luke, me, and my cowboy hat. When we got home, we watched Inside Out and knew it had been one of the best days of our lives. We didn't need anything else. We used to have fun like two little kids with the simplest things, and I will miss that so much. We loved watching basketball players at the sports center, playing arcade games, and seeing his face when I won. One of our favorite things was eating postre, which was a type of dessert. He supported me wholeheartedly when I had my Muay Thai fight, and he patiently listened to me talk about it all week afterward. He made my achievements seem bigger. He had a unique talent for inventing new words or phrases in Spanish, and he'd compose impromptu songs in English and Spanish right on the spot. It was crazy and wonderful. Chinga da madre. I will miss sharing morning coffee with him. I will miss cooking for him. He was my #1 fan. I will also miss enjoying meals together, training and sparring side by side, showing him new places, caring for him, and dancing with him. Luke inspired me to create. Being with him made me want to draw, to paint, to explore the world through art. He reminded me how much I love to express myself in those ways. He gave me peace during my toughest moments. He took care of me when I was sick, making me tea, treating me like a princess. He was my safe place. He showed me what pure love is. That love is irreplaceable, and I will always be grateful for it. On his last day in Mexico, he made carne un sojudo, one of my favorite Mexican dishes, just for me, and it was delicious. Can you believe it? That man truly loved me as much as I loved him. There isn't a day that goes by without me missing his sweet voice, calling me my beautiful angel princess, mi amorcito, and my darling, and I miss kissing him and hugging him so tightly. Most people go through life without ever feeling that close to someone, but I found my prince. We dreamed of a life together forever and talked about our future plans only weeks ago, plans that now aren't possible. But baby, I promise I will honor your life with mine. I will dance and make art, carrying you in my heart always. With all my love, your darling princess.
Thank you, Wyatt. Wonderful. Call up Candace and Sonia. Candace.
I'm going to try my very best to get through this, and if I can't, Sonia will take over. There's no way to explain how much Luke meant to me, or how much I'll deeply miss him. I still remember the day that I found out I was getting a baby cousin. I was 9 years old and I was so excited. And to this day, I still teased him about the fact that I saw him running around without a nappy on and his bum in the wind, and he hated when I told other people that. But from the beginning, he was perfect. He radiated a kind of light and warmth that he carried with him his whole life through. Luke had the most infectious smile. You could not be in the same room with him and stay in a bad mood. It just wasn't possible. His sense of humor was wickedly sharp, but he was always kind. More than that, he had an incredible ability to make people feel truly seen. Luke made me feel loved without even trying. The idea that I'll never hear him call me his darling again is unfathomable to me. We shared a lifetime of memories growing up, and there are so many stories I could tell. But one time I'll always treasure is when he came to stay with us in Canada for my and Sonia's wedding. Luke didn't just attend, he threw himself into that wedding in the most Luke way possible. I remember a couple of days before I looked down my driveway and Luke came trundling up with his suitcase behind him, caught the train, and massive smile on his face, just so happy to be there. I remember him shirtless in our living room, elbows deep in flower arrangements. He was determined to make the bouquets perfect, and Sonia was snapping pictures of him the whole time. She said to him, Luke, can you imagine what this will do for your Tinder profile? You're shirtless making bouquets of flowers. But he never had to make that Tinder profile because shortly thereafter he met Milla, and that was it for Luke. I remember him shirtless in our backyard, building a flower bed with my nephew Lincoln draped over his shoulders, driving him insane. And yet he was so patient and loving. That flower bed is still there, and it's very skewed. And every time I pull into the driveway, I think of Luke, because for all of his talents, I think we can all agree he did not have a career as a carpenter. I still think of him in my memories on the road with Tegan, cleaning out our compost bin that the garbage guys forgot to collect. Both him and Tegan just retching on the street throughout the whole process because they couldn't handle the stink, but they did it anyway. There were so many mornings where he'd be shirtless on our front porch, a coffee in hand, deep in a spirited, hilarious, and thought-provoking discussion with Sonia about feminism, equality, relationships, religion, and later shirtless again at our dining room table, handcrafting the most beautiful ceramic bird. That bird is actually on all of your programs right now. That is the bird that Luke created, and he sat for hours just making sure that it was right and just perfect. And he was so talented at anything he put his hands to. It was the first time he'd done ceramics, and this piece is gorgeous. Honestly, Luke spent a lot of time in our house shirtless. And it became this charming, unforgettable part of his presence. And I wouldn't trade those memories for anything. We also had the pleasure of getting to visit Luke in Mexico City. He had a very disciplined regimen of working on his poker and hitting the gym for jiu-jitsu. And he hadn't explored much of his own neighborhood despite having lived there for 6 months. And so when we arrived, Sonia schooled him on his own neighborhood and said, hey, this is where you'll find good coffee and great food. And And it was wonderful. It was like, oh my goodness, I didn't even know these things were here, because he was focused and determined. We spent a whole day exploring, and he loved all the food we had, especially the ceviche at this experimental corn restaurant, and he was so excited to bring Milla there. We also got to meet the lovely Milla, who we absolutely adored. We could see how happy he was, and it made it just a little bit easier to leave him in Mexico City, knowing how loved he was and that he wasn't alone. And then there was the moment that I'll never forget, and it'll be etched into my memory forever. When Sonia and I walked down the aisle, Luke stood there at the front, absolutely sobbing. That memory is completely etched into my heart, and it's it was one of the most special days of my life, and it was made all the more meaningful just by him being there. I hope I remember that moment, his expression, his emotion, and his love is clearly forever. He said to us afterwards, "It is very unfair what both of you did to me. You didn't warn me that you were coming down the aisle at the same time, and it was like watching a phoenix rise from the ashes, and it was too much for me." Losing Luke doesn't make sense. It hurts beyond words, but I find comfort in the memories, the laughter, the hugs, the creativity, the chaos, and the calm. The ordinary moments that became extraordinary just because he was there. He made my life infinitely brighter, and that kind of light doesn't just disappear. It stays with us in the stories we tell, in the love that we give, and yes, in the flower beds, ceramic birds, and shirtless coffee chats on the porch. Luki, I'll love you and miss you always. And I promise that every morning I'll look for the sun.
Thank you, Jess. If Amy wants to come up, is there something?
Okay, you're going to be looking at me for a while, like you did with Wyatt, but it's not just mine, I promise. I went to varsity. Okay. I went to varsity with Luke, and I was part of a trio with myself, our friend Pops, and Luke. And Pops lives in Australia, and right now she's flying back to Australia. And she asked me to read some words for her. So this is not from me, this is from Pops. In 2013, I had one of the best years of my life. Having dropped out of Stellenbosch with my sister having passed a bit prior, I enrolled at the University of KwaZulu-Natal with zero expectations of finding any reprieve from the grief. I met Amy, and whilst we were not instant friends, some forced close proximity of lectures from 8 to 4 soon had us inseparable. It was halfway through this year that Amy and I gathered. This is who I am, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be doing this. Amy and I gathered on what was known on campus as the quad, that we met Luke. As Luke often liked to remind me, it was on this fateful day that I did something completely out of character for me. I'm not a people person. I find making friends hard and often avoid socializing if I can. But standing on the square waiting for the next classes to begin, I spotted Luke. Black backpack on, striding across campus, looking confident as ever, but alone. I shouted at him to come over and forced him to exchange numbers with us, deeming him the third participant in what would become a lifelong trio. Sorry. I will happily now claim that I am the one that instigated this trio. Luke and I were instant friends, a phenomena that it turned out was unusual for both of us. In the weeks and months to follow, whenever we spotted the elusive creature who did not attend many lectures, we would excitedly force our presence upon him, forcing him to sit on the bench and listen and tell us all about his day, usually filled with some sarcastic quip or an intelligent remark. Our varsity mingles soon became out-of-varsity mingles, with that December holiday being the real working foundation for our friendship, living pretty solidly at Amy's house for the full duration. During varsity years, I got to know a quite sharp-tongued Luke, who never took anything too seriously, kept me humbled with his jokes, and always saw the bright side of life. Someone who was completely dumbfounded by Ames's sensitive soul and open emotional expressions of love and vulnerability. Someone who was a phenomenal dancer even then, but always had some kind of guard up. But in the latter years of our friendship, I was blessed to see a side that he showed to very few. Thank you. A side of Luke that, while still incredibly sarcastic and witty, was also incredibly emotional and vulnerable. The three of us, now being in 3 different time zones, 3 very different lifestyles and stages of life, had a new sort of friendship. One that ran much deeper, with no limit on what we could discuss. No judgments, open vulnerability, and more important, open expressions of love. Where I especially reminded Luke continuously that he was loved unconditionally by us, and how important he was to us. I am forever grateful that we held this honest friendship, and I hope that's what he remembered at the end, that he was truly adored and cherished by us. Luke was one of my very best friends. Why did they give this to the sensitive one? Like, why couldn't they be here? Luke was one of my very best friends, part of my core, and there are no words to do justice to how much I'll miss him. Linda, Duncan, and Wyatt. He was the most remarkable, complicated boy, and I'm so sorry for your loss. She did me dirty with this one. Okay, as I end this, I feel Luke would want me to acknowledge to everyone just how much Wyatt meant to him. Wyatt's sibling dynamics are an odd thing, and your brother was one of the most stubborn people I've ever met. But even his stubbornness could not quieten his adoration of you. Whilst you were his baby brother, in many ways, it was him that looked up to you. Grief has this weird way of making us remember all the things we didn't do or should have done differently, especially me. But at the base of it, Luke was loved, and Luke loved us, and that's all there was to it. Luke Monkey Edwards, I love you very much. Thank you for being my instant friend. Love, Hops. Thank you. Managing me so well. Now I'm gonna do mine. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll be honest. While I was so honored that I could speak at Luke's memorial, I was also really daunted. How do you summarize a friendship in a few words or phrases? How do you describe so aptly what a person has meant to you as your final goodbye? So I sat with it for a while and I thought, what would Luke tell me to do? He'd tell me to just talk to him as the friend he was and always will be, and to not worry about the other details. So I'm going to do that. I will cry, it's a bit late for that. It's just part of who I am, so I apologize for that. I'm lucky because Hops already gave a background about how our friendship with Luke came to be. And what she said is true. Hops and Luke spent their lives showing each other their love, with sarcastic remarks and quips aimed at the other, both knowing that it was only ever given in laughter and adoration. Luke was different with me. While we could always have a laugh and he loved to tease, he saw me as something to be more gentle with, and I'm grateful for that. I was and am the sensitive one of the 3 of us, and after being told for a lot of my life that this was a fault, Luke and Hops always treated it as a treasure and something to protect. Especially in later years, if Luke was ever unsure if he was being insensitive or needed a different perspective in a situation, he would reach out and we would chat about it. He had this ability to make anyone he loved feel like they had a superpower of some kind, just by being themselves, and that was his superpower. His love and friendship were always fierce and unapologetic. And while he'd tell you for free just how good looking he was and how great he is, I know that Luke never really saw himself as we all did, as a force of nature. I hope that he now knows just how much he added to the lives of those that he loved. You know when friends say they grew up together, you picture little 3-year-olds running around and then going to varsity together. That's the typical we grew up together kind of story. I'm extremely blessed to say that I grew up with Luke in a completely different sense. We only met at around 19, 20 years old. Technically we were adults, but we still had so much learning and discovery to do. Our friendship stood the test of time, and as we changed from being the know-it-all young adults who actually knew absolutely nothing into people who questioned and journeyed and found their way to themselves. At varsity, Luke spent a lot of time at my house, and Wyatt would often visit too. Once my sister came home from living in America and walked into the house, and Wyatt turned around from the couch and said, "Who are you and why are you here?" To which Luke replied, shirtless as well. "She actually lives here. Unlike me, I just pretend to after the draw." I got to bartend with Luke at Tiger, sit on the benches with him and Hops at varsity, and commiserate over our hangovers and talk about the night before with our friends. You knew you were in for a good night if it involved Luke. And even after fighting, him and Boyens always took it on themselves to make sure we got home safely. But as we grew and matured, I also got to talk to him about the things that mattered. I got to read what was written of his book. He got to meet my husband, and we got to know Milla. In August last year, him and Milla came home and attended my wedding. That is something I'll always be grateful for. Hops was here from Australia and Luke from Mexico, and we got to have one last hurrah in person, although we didn't know it would be our last. We made plans for what we'd do when we all got together for our 40th, and I got to hug Luke goodbye and thank him for coming. In recent months, we also spoke about how we'd raise our children and that we'd force them all to be cross-continental friends. FaceTiming kids they didn't even know, with Hops' eldest, Max, leading the charge. I have so many different versions of who Luke is in my head, and all of them are my favorite. We're nearly there. Luke had a depth to him, one that was always there, but that was expressed more as he learnt about who he was and who he wanted to be. I got the honor of hearing his plans, his hopes, and his dreams, as well as the work he was doing to face any problems in his current life or demons from his past head on. In one of our recent conversations, I had apologized to Luke for something stupid. I can't even remember exactly what it was. I had said something about sorry that the voice note was long and rambly and he didn't need to listen. He replied to me very sternly that I'm never allowed to apologize to him for anything ever again. Never for sharing my thoughts on something I saw on the news, or a funny story Jason had shared with me, or the length of a voice note. And then he pinned that message in our conversation so that whenever we messaged, him telling me not to apologize was there at the top. But I'm going to say it once more. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the years that he didn't get. I'm sorry for the loss to Linda, Duncan, and Wyatt, and all of Luke's loved ones. I'm sorry that he won't get to meet my future kids. And I'm sorry that the world no longer has the spark that was Luke Edwards. The love he so freely shared is so felt by the deep loss that is left in his wake. I'm about to get real woo-woo and deep for a minute, but you kind of led the way in there, so I'm stoked about that. So bear with, okay? Luke told me to be who I was, would tell me to be who I was no matter what, so this is me honoring that. For a lot of the years that I knew him, Luke was not a spiritual person. It just wasn't who he was. And that changed in the last 2 years, and I am so grateful for that. Because today, I know he's at peace. I know that he's happy. And I know that I'll get to see him again one day. Thank you for your friendship, Lucas. I have comfort that you're looking down and know that you're loved and always will be. I will miss you every day. Thank you.
This is yours? And that's mine.
So sorry.
Thanks, Amy. Kim?
Luke, I'm reading this on behalf of Devon, our son. He's based in London, and he's on the call at the moment. And him and Luke shared a very special friendship.
also started at university as well. Dear Luke, when I heard the news from Scotty on Thursday, the 10th of April, I didn't know what to think. I didn't know how to feel, and I didn't know what to say. And then I remembered our oath. An oath to always see the glass half full, an oath to throw caution to the wind, an oath to always look life in the eye and make mistakes so we can learn the lessons, never back down, and the restless pursuit to the meaning of life. From our 6 a.m. walks home from Origins to our morning chats at university, to our post-work debriefs at Billy's, to our euphoric moments at festivals, we always enjoyed finding those moments of life that everything was perfect, pure serenity. The impervious mindset that we adopted, along with the blood oath that you forced my hand into being the godfather to my 2 children. We pushed each other, competitive without realizing it. You are the smart one, me the empathetic one. You're the one relying on the probability of mathematically and making me rely on the gut or emotion. You always ironically were the peacemaker and me always initiating the chaos. Me the instigator and you the collaborator. I guess I feel a sense of guilt, as we all would in this situation. A sense that I don't let our brotherhood grow with our years and maturity. But you were the only person that never passed any judgment. Always a level head that would use logic before reason. The only person that was there for me in my darkest hour, when everything felt lost in 2014. And again, I struggled with the meaning of life or purpose. I feel guilt for not paying much more attention to our friendship and not checking in. I feel guilt for not showing you how much you meant to me in my foundations. I feel guilty for not keeping you updated, but the Luke I know would never want that either. When I saw you in Mexico in January 2022, we hadn't changed. It was like when we ever were together. We were our giddy young selves, always looking to get up to mischief and ready to take the world on. We both felt invincible together, a brotherhood that could never be broken. Although mine was all cerebral and you believed it in the present. None more so than when you decided to take on 6 locals at once, thinking we'd come off on top, as usual. You were fearless and irrational, but had the biggest heart. You had my back and I always had yours. What is the meaning of life and why are we here? What is your purpose? Will I find mine? These were all questions you constantly brought up, and depending on the time of day, always had an answer to. 42. In the end, you found it. Connection and family. Love is the power source. You loved unconditionally and always wore your heart on your sleeve. Even with all your tough stickers and jiu-jitsu moves, you were a soft yet magnificent human. Someone that was always too smart for their own good. Someone that just didn't take my tips from Billy to Suncoast Casino and triple my earnings weekly with roulette because you liked winning and gambling. You did it because you knew how to beat the system. You did it to test your theories, and you did it because you knew the probability of winning and wanted to fulfill that curiosity. You wouldn't want me to be sad and grieve about this, even though it's been hard to come to the realization that you're no longer here. You would want me to celebrate life and continue our quest to 42. Who knows what 42 means? To finding the theory of life and what our purpose was. Keep being curious and never backing down. So that's what I'll be. Curious, impervious, and a peacemaker. I'll meet you at the drop of our favorite song, With Love from Your Brother. Meet you in heaven, dear.
Thank you, Kim. Kendall?
This is on behalf of Charmaine Baker, who unfortunately couldn't stay for the service. She was Luke and my high school squash coach. I think Will was Wyatt too. I know dear Luke from school squash days. He was the one who kept me on my toes. He will always remain in our hearts. This little verse best describes this dear soul. The butterfly lights beside us, like a sunbeam, and for a while its beauty and glory belong to this world. But then it flies on again, and though we wish it could have stayed, we are so glad to have known it.
Thank you. Right. Okay, just got one or two emails I'd like to read out quickly, and then I've just got a small video to show. Okay, this is from Bear, Luke's aunt. Writing this does not seem real. A month ago we were laughing, chatting about your future, your book, your dreams, my beautiful nephew. Our hearts have been ripped out. Luke was such a positive and happy young man and brought such joy to all our lives. He left us with so many good memories, camping trips, family outings together, his granny doting on him and Wyatt, making sure there was enough jelly in the fridge for them when they came home from school. I believe right now Luke is with his grandparents who loved him so much and are showering him with love. When I think of Luke, I see this young man who was not only beautiful on the outside, but beautiful on the inside as well. He always made me feel so special. He was always kind to the youngest children of the family. Luke was an amazing athlete. He excelled at rugby, giving us headaches about his injuries. Excelled at cricket, hockey, squash, in fact, anything Luke did, sport-wise, he excelled at. I remember the times we all played squash and how competitive him and Wyatt were. We never stood a chance. Luke was always full of fun. I remember when he took Meg's place on the MSC cruise to Mozambique. He was Michael's partner because Meg was in the UK. He did play the part well. He made most of the cruise, most of it every minute of the cruise. He was determined to win all the deck games. I'm not too sure if he actually did, but I know he was very, very competitive. Linda and Dunks, Wyatt and Luke are sons you can be so proud of, true proud of. The amount of friends Luke had and the amazing tributes to him show what amazing character he was. You can be proud, especially proud of him and Wyatt. I just want to say how happy I am that he had found love with Millie. And I know how much she loved Luke. He will never be forgotten, always cherished and loved. That was from B. Two more from Jenna, my daughter. Luke, there are no words to describe the void you have left in the world and in our hearts. I am deeply grateful for the time we shared, especially during Candice and Sonia's wedding in Canada, where I saw a side of you I hadn't had the privilege to see before. It was a magical time, all being together. I could clearly see the deep love and care you had for all of us. Recently, I was talking about you with Lincoln, my grandson. He fondly remembers you as the good uncle, recalling how you played with him when no one else would. I watched you unprompted drop what you were doing and get down on the dirt with an 8-year-old boy who was sad because he was missing his dad. I saw you looking out for him, making sure he was safe and not lost in the crowds. I could write pages about the small and meaningful acts I've noticed, things that you might not have thought were a big deal, but I saw and I cherished. Luke, I will carry you in my heart forever, always. To Linda, Duncan and Wyatt, I'm deeply sorry for your loss. Luke was a beautiful soul, and we miss him every day. And then from his cousin Megan and Michael in London. It breaks my heart that I can't be with you all here today to celebrate Luke's life. He left such a big hole in our family sorry, he has left such a big hole in our family, but only because he meant so much to all of us. My childhood memories always include Luke and Wyatt. From the many camping trips we had as a family to spending many hours watching Disney movies, mainly Aladdin on repeat, to meeting Westlife, and taking an awkward photo of them that I still have today. Eventually we grew up and moved out to the different parts of the world, but Luke always made an effort to stay in touch with us all. This included short messages on Instagram, WhatsApp, asking Choppy, which is her husband, about computers advice. Luke will always be part of our lives through the memories that will never be forgotten and the love that we will have for him. Our love to Linda, Duncan, and Wyatt. I don't know if there's anybody else who would like to say something. Please make your way.
Afternoon, everyone. I'm sure a lot of you do not know me. My name is Modise Sifume, and for my sins I was at Madsville College with Luke, and I was in his dorm for many years. Having sat here this morning, this afternoon, sorry, I don't think I can go back home without saying something about Luke. Luke was probably the most stubborn person I've ever met in my life. I'm convinced, and I don't have proof, but I'm convinced Luke did Zulu just to prove that not everyone had to do Afrikaans. I remember at one stage, we could have been in grade 10. I'd been doing Afrikaans and I just switched to Zulu, and I said to him, you know, if I start doing Zulu, you might come last in the whole grade. And then he's like, obviously you'll beat me. It's not my first language. And I said, I'm Sotho, me too. So that was my friendship with Luke. And there's so many things I've heard about him today that were so prevalent in our adolescent years. He was incredibly kind, especially to me. He loved his brother. And that I've known since the day I met Luke. He was a passionate man and a staunch defender of those he loved. And I did mention that he was stubborn, but my God, was Luke stubborn. I don't know how many times he got into fights, into arguments, and even fighting and arguing with me most of the time. But soon after the news was announced that Luke had passed, one of the teachers sent me a message, and she'd recently retired from Madsville College, and she said to me that, boy, was he a horrible boy to teach, but man did we respect him, and that was Luke. People respected him because he was so steadfast in his views. He wasn't a pushover, and I think someone had mentioned it earlier. You couldn't convince him that the sky was purple. You'd have to give him very pronounced reasons, and if you could not give him those reasons, he'd never believe you. He was an incredibly good friend, and you know, I look at my messages now, and my last message from him was on my birthday, and he said, "Happy birthday, beautiful." And I said, "Thanks, my love." And he liked it. That's Luke, and I just want to say to the family that you are not alone in your pain. There are many college boys who have throughout the last week or two sent messages to all of us who were close to him just to say how stubborn he was and how much they were all miss him. And to everyone who's here to bid my friend farewell, thank you very much. And to the family who will always be here, even without Luke, who will always be here for you as well. Want. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Kind words. Okay, we've just got two things left. There's two videos that were sent to Linda from, I don't know if they came from Mexico, from Milla. From Mexico, sorry. They're just short videos. We're asking us Rena to play them, and then we'll just conclude. Thank you. Well, for those of you who can lip read, you're right. Try again.
Has that big fighter and warrior heart that is difficult to get on the matches and on the tatami. And you know, my friend, I just want to let you know that wherever you meet right now, you are one of my best teammates that I have here in the Basic Academy. I will always thank you. I will always be very grateful and happy that we could share the fights and the matches here in Daisy Barra. I remember how kind you were with me, you put me up with job and with your friendship, of course. And always you're gonna be here in my heart. I always gonna remember you because you are those guys that has that big fighter and warrior heart that is difficult to get on the matches and on the tatami. Since you are right here, you show me how big was your heart and how big was your attitude of competition, and always you give out the best in the trainings. So I'm gonna remember your smile, your dedication, your friendship, your loyalty. You are still here. I always remember how you were on the competition, man. And I always gonna remember you, my friend. God save you. We're gonna meet soon. Always, we're gonna remember you here in Playa del Carmen, my dear friend. We hope for you and your beloved. From Playa, your friend, Luis. Ciao.
My name is Thomas Fisher, and I was one of Luke's coaches at the academy where he trained jiu-jitsu for a few years. Luke almost always took my classes, my MMA classes and my jiu-jitsu classes. I can say I'm very happy I got to know Luke as a friend and as a student, as a training partner as well. And I was also fortunate enough to have coached Luke a few times in competition, jiu-jitsu competitions, and he competed extremely well. He took wins and losses equally well, which is an extremely rare quality that most people do not possess. It was impressive to see him win and shrug it off, and when he did lose, raise his opponent's hand like a true gentleman and sportsman and warrior. Luke will be missed by many people. The jiu-jitsu community, our community, and Playa del Carmen generally Me personally, as a coach, I'm grateful I got to know Luke. I'm grateful he trained as much with me as he did. And I will remember him very fondly. In my classes, sometimes I have a pretty large distribution of athleticism and strength and talent and size. I have some smaller students, some less advanced students, and I actually have a blind student who's also fairly small. So when I'm teaching, I have to oftentimes look around the room to see who I can send some of my weaker, smaller, less advanced students to train with. And I have to pick somebody that will take care of them, that will not allow them to get hurt. And Luke was one of those guys. I could send Luke any student knowing they were in good hands, knowing they wouldn't get injured, even though Luke was one of the toughest, strongest, most athletic guys in the room always. And for me, that's very special. I'm gonna miss him.
Right. To conclude, I'd just like to thank a few people on behalf of Linda, Duncan and Wyatt, Candice and Sonia, Bev, Don, Cherie, for making the hall so lovely, the people who supplied the flowers, and for Steve, for supplying the sound and video, and making it possible to live stream this event all around the world. Thanks guys for coming, and just remember there's eats and there's drinks available, and there is a book at the back which Linda and Duncan and Wyatt would love you guys to sign. Thank you very much.